Welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, where we share stories of hope, healing, and resilience. And we're so excited to be here today to welcome our very first guest, Adam Maya, amazing human being, our dear friend. And we're just so happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure.
Yes. So, just to give a little background on our connection with Adam, Eric and Adam went to acupuncture school together, and they have been longtime buds ever since. I love your friendship so much, it's so inspiring. And I then had the pleasure of meeting you also after that when I met Eric. So we love you and we love your family, and you're just such a dear friend to us. And you're just also such an inspiring, well rounded, like I said, amazing human being and entrepreneur. And I just want to say, you sent me your bio today, and I was just going through that thinking, like, wow, what an incredible human being. I'm so excited to hear your story and just to share a little bit of his bio and his gifts. First of all, you were born in South Africa and grew up in both Australia and San Diego, California. You studied film and theater at UCLA, which I didn't know, and that makes a lot of sense now of like who you are. And you're a doctor of acupuncture, Chinese medicine. You're a tea pouring master. You've authored multiple books, motivational and keynote speaker, and now a residential real estate agent, or consultant rather. Most importantly, my most favorite role that I have witnessed you in is being a dad of these two beautiful daughters of yours. So that's just your gifts to share. Let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself now. Like, who is Adam? Who is Adam now? Where are you? What's happening in your world right now before we go into like the deep, deep story?
Great question. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, my favorite role is being a dad also. It is an incredible blessing and I learn a lot from it. My daughters are, I think, my greatest teachers, and they know all the right buttons to push so that I have to grow and learn, which is great. So yeah, now I live in Dallas. I've been out here for about 3 years with my family and love it out here. I'm now doing real estate, which again, when you kind of think about my eclectic background, it seems so random. But it's just another way that I can serve people, and it's a
Yeah,
way that helps me serve my family. And I get to work with people and help them journey through what is usually a really huge emotional and financial endeavor to either buy or sell a home, and it's kind of special to be part of that journey. So that's my work these days. A lot of my time is spent with my family, with my girls. They grow up fast, so I'm trying to soak up as much time with them as I can before they're, so old that they go on and do their own things.
right. They're so beautiful. And yes, they grow so fast. And even in the short time that I have known you and witnessing those girls grow into these little beautiful women, it's just amazing. And it's so beautiful to witness you in that role as a dad. And you're just so amazing. And so is your wife, Lex. Shout out to Lex. So, yes, with that, drive that you have, because for me, that's how I perceive you. It's just like such a driven person. You're always trying new things, you're learning, I see like always studying and growing. And, with that, I'm sure that comes with like a background of like where was that rooted in for you? And I don't know much about your story. Eric shared just a little snippet of it. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in with you. I know that your hero's journey began in childhood, was like rooted in childhood. So I would love to like dive into that and just kind of take us back to that, take us back to where that journey began for you.
Absolutely. So my hero's journey began before I can even remember it. But, it starts really with my parents. And, I was born a healthy baby boy.
Mm,
And within a matter of months, my parents and then doctors started to realize that I may be happy, but I wasn't quite healthy.
mm,
And so I started having a very large spleen and liver and all sorts of abnormal blood counts and wasn't growing properly. So I was run through a whole bunch of different tests and misdiagnosis of possible cancers or leukemias or, kind of trying to figure out what was going on. And eventually my brilliant pediatrician at the time uh, kind of remembered this rare genetic disease that he had kind of heard about in medical school and decided to do a test for that. And sure enough, that was the magic ticket. So yeah, I have a rare genetic disease called Gaucher's disease, and I was diagnosed at 18 months old. So at the time, there was no known treatment. There was nothing that could be done. And so my parents were actually told essentially to enjoy me while I was around because I probably wouldn't see my sixth birthday.
wow.
And, the magnitude of that statement, I think it was always a sort of powerful factor in my love for life and my motivation. But until I became a parent, I didn't understand their perspective on what a crazy thing to be told by someone.
Yeah, and how scary that is, and just how that puts life into perspective. And yeah, I'm sure that must have been so scary for your parents. Can I ask you what was happening in your body? Like, what was this? What's the name of it? If you could just say it again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Gaucher's disease. It's named after the French physician that discovered it.
Okay.
And uh, basically, it's a genetic disease where I lack a particular kind of enzyme. And with what that enzyme does is it breaks down a certain type of lipid, a lipid cell. And without that enzyme, those lipids end up storing, they become what are known as Gaucher's cells. And they
Mm,
end up storing in the various organs, the liver, the spleen, the bones. And so what that looks like is I had a massive spleen and liver, a distended belly. I'll get more into that later, but a huge spleen and liver, very weak bones, very low blood count. So I would bruise easily, I would bleed easily. I have nosebleeds that would last, for hours on end. Just very uncomfortable. And that's what kind of clued my parents in that something wasn't right. Just the
of
large
course.
abdomen, the
Yep.
easy bruising, and then obviously through all of the diagnostics, they figured out what it was. And again, there was nothing they could do. But credit to my parents because they told this doctor essentially like, thank not my pediatrician, this other specialist who said I wouldn't live past 6 years old, and they basically said, well, that's your opinion, and we'll send you an invitation to his bar mitzvah one day.
Oh,
And sure enough, the first invitation that got sent out when I turned 13 was to that specialist. So,
I love that.
you know, he um
Yes.
he was wrong on my lifespan, which was good, but there was no treatment or nothing that could be done until I was 10 years old. And so for the first 10 years
10
of
years.
life, I was very, very sick. And by the time I was 8, my spleen weighed more than I did when I was born. So I literally had a pregnant belly, except instead of a baby, there was a spleen. So I had a massive abdomen. I couldn't bend over and tie my shoes. I had to wear suspenders to keep my pants up because I couldn't use a belt. My liver was also very huge. I had extremely weak bones, so extreme bone pain, lots of nosebleeds and bruising. And so I was a very physically uncomfortable, but I think I always had a good attitude, and humor has always been a big part of my life. And I think, it's interesting that we're here talking about the hero's journey because something that helped me through so much of that was comic books and
Yeah.
superheroes.
Mm.
And that instilled in me this great imagination, which got me through some of those very, very challenging times.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, and just thank you for being so open and willing to share that part of your life. As a child, I mean, when you said it started at 18 months, for me, I was thinking, maybe that lasted a few years, but for 10 years to have this experience as a child, how how did that feel for you as a child going through those years of your life?
It was certainly challenging. I knew on one hand I didn't know any different because it was with me all my life, but I also knew that I was very different. I couldn't play sports, I couldn't participate in the things that the kids around me could participate in. I spent more time in hospitals and doctors' offices than, most people do in their entire lifetime within, my first decade of life. So, I joke that I had a kind of honorary medical degree by the time I was 10, just because I was so familiar with all of these medical procedures and techniques. And, it was just
You were already a doctor.
exactly, it was a honorary, honorary medical degree through experience. But yeah, it was challenging, but I had a phenomenal support system. My parents were incredible. And, you talk about heroes, they are still to this day my greatest heroes because of what they went through. And this, we're talking about the time before the internet, before it was easy to look something up and have access. So, they did everything they could to keep me comfortable because there was really no treatment. So it
Yeah.
was just a matter of, helping with the pain and the symptoms and trying to give me as normal a life as possible under the circumstances.
So amazing. Thank God for your parents, and just any parents out there listening, just you're so amazing. And if you are going through something like that with your children, just know that you're not alone, and there is support out there for parents that are going through this. So, Adam, can I ask you, what was the pain that you're experiencing in your body going through that? Just, if there is anybody out there that may be or know of somebody who does have this rare disease, what kind of things were you experiencing?
So the worst of it were essentially what are known as infarcts. And so, when someone has a heart attack, the technical term is a myocardial infarction, right? And what's happening is that the blood is being blocked. And if it's the case of a heart attack, it's extremely painful. It stops the heart. For me, those infarcts would take place in my spleen and my bones. And so pieces of my spleen would essentially be dying, and it was excruciatingly painful. And all that could be done was give me meds. And gosh, I was given all sorts of intense pain medications as a young child. We're
I
talking
can imagine.
morphine and all sorts of horrible things, but that was all that could be done. And I would have these same issues with bones where the blood flow to the bones would be blocked, and basically the bones would die off. And that was the worst of it I can recall. Is it felt like my doctor tapped, the base of my foot just gently, and it felt like a lightning bolt traveling straight into my hip. It was excruciating, and that actually my hip ended up essentially disintegrating. And so I spent 3 months in a hospital in traction, immobilized on severe painkillers. And then I spent another couple months in a cast from my belly down to my toes so that the hip could slowly rebuild itself. So I became an expert on crutches. I could run around on crutches. And but yeah, that was the worst of the pain that I experienced. And then just, extreme fatigue and nosebleeds that would go on, and those sorts of things were the main symptoms that I experienced.
Wow. You are such a warrior, and having not known this story about you and just knowing who you are now and having known you for the past few years and just your lifestyle and everything, everything's making sense, of like, I, I can imagine that's why you became a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I can imagine that's why you studied film and theater and just like everything that you have done. It makes so much sense to me now, like putting those pieces together. I'm curious what I know it was all challenging, was what I was saying. I want to do it in two questions. Like, what was the most challenging part for you? And then, like, how did you get through it?
That's a great set of questions. And I think, I think that when I look at it at a surface level, I could say the physical symptoms were the most difficult. But when I peel that back, I think what was really the most challenging was just being so different
Mm,
and not being allowed to participate in sports and
mm,
even play tag and do things that all my
yeah,
friends could do because it was dangerous for me. And I think, at some point as I got older and the kids around me got older, the teacher would send me on an errand, and while I was away, they would tell the class, "Hey, this is what's going on with Adam, so this is why you can't do these things with him." And so, that being treated differently and feeling like such an outsider, I think was, as I got older and started to be more self-aware, I think that was, probably one of the biggest challenges was, in a weird way, like the physical stuff, it was, of course, uncomfortable, but I could push through it. And, I could be given meds, and even though they'd make me loopy and I'd hallucinate, like the pain would go away.
yeah,
But I think the idea of being so different, being sort of that, not an outcast in the traditional sense, but, living in a different world than the people around me. I think that is what really challenged me as I grew older. And I think that's kind of what sent me into my real journey of discovery, that hero's journey.
yeah. Wow. It's so much to process as a child, and just I can, my heart, like I have to even take a moment because just feeling into like that little boy and knowing, like you said, going on the errand at school, but also knowing that, in the classroom, they're like, hey, this is, why we have to, you know, treat him this way, or like I could fully feel that feeling of just like separateness or feeling, yeah, it's different or separate. Um, and sending so much love to
Mm.
that little boy. So I could imagine this would be such a challenging time for you and your family. How did you and your family navigate through this and move through it and heal through this?
Yeah, as I said earlier, my support system was phenomenal. My parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, my little sister, everyone was phenomenal in those times of need. And what happened was at the time I was living, so from age 5 to around age 10, I was living in Sydney, Australia. But by the miracles that the universe provides, my parents heard about, because again, there was no internet, right? There was no phone, so you have the news at your fingertips. They had heard from a friend of theirs who had been at a dinner party in San Diego. There was a doctor in San Diego working on a trial treatment for my condition. And so, sure enough, my parents were able to get his information, gave him a call, and he said, "If you can get your son to San Diego, I will put him on the trial." And so that was the reason we moved from Sydney to San
That's why you
Diego.
moved.
Yep, and I became the first pediatric patient on this trial treatment. I think I was maybe the one of the first 5 people on the planet to be receiving treatment of any kind. But in this particular the protocol. I was the first pediatric patient at, 9 years old. And
Wow.
that was a
What a
huge,
miracle.
huge miracle, a huge turning point because I had to go 3 times a week to get a 2-hour IV infusion of the enzyme that I lack. And
Mhm.
fortunately, it was an experimental trial, but it worked very well. And so, I got to exchange the time I was spending in hospitals because of my illness and my injury with, you know, spending 3 times a week getting an IV of medicine and slowly normalizing. My blood count slowly normalized. I had had most of my spleen taken out a year prior, but what was
Okay.
left and my liver started to normalize, my bones started to get stronger. So this was a strange transition of having spent 10 years as, quote unquote, this sick kid. And now there was this whole new
Life.
potential of life because, when I was a kid, I knew there was no treatment. I knew there was no cure. So I always believed I would live a long life, but there was always that part of me that questioned it
Right.
because no one knew. And so now all of a sudden at 10 years old, I'm getting treatment, I'm starting to feel better. And so it was a whole, a whole new world of wow. So there is a future for me, and it's a future of potentially being essentially normal. And so that's, I think, where the next phase of the journey began for me of really kind of diving into, so what does this mean? And at 10, I still didn't comprehend it really, but as I got older and as I moved towards my teenage years, particularly in high school, and by then I was essentially healthy and normal. I was, started playing baseball. I was doing things that I was told I would never be able to do.
Yeah.
And somebody gave me a copy of the Celestine Prophecy. And the message, that's kind of through this book is there's no such thing as coincidence.
Hmm.
And it just got me thinking about, all these things in my life that I was angry about or that I blamed God or the universe for, there may have been more to it than that. Maybe there was a point and purpose behind all of it. And that I would say is where my awakening began.
Yeah.
And then it fueled this insatiable appetite to know the why. Why
Mhm.
are we here? I would have been asked that question since I was a kid, like, why me? Why, why? But it took on a new flavor, and that just, essentially opened up the spiritual floodgates. And so I think while most people in high school were, exploring partying and these other sorts of experiences, I was starting to dive into like the spiritual and mystical world and traditions of the world that I, felt held answers. And that journey lasted, that journey's been ongoing for the last 30 years or so. But I think that was a big turning point where I started to really look at and find gratitude for my experiences.
Yeah.
That I went through this for a reason, and that led me down the path to all of the things that that we talked about in on my resume, so to speak.
Right. Right. That's so beautiful. It's so beautiful because, we could stay in that mindset where we're like, why me? Or why did that have to happen to me? And I definitely went through that phase too after my accident. It was like a roller coaster. It was, the why me and then the realization and then the happenings. But it's so beautiful that you chose the path of gratitude through that and you saw the purpose through that and you didn't and you tried all of the things after that too that it obviously like fueled your soul. So I'm curious, what did you learn about yourself through that, like just even throughout these years, like what do you keep learning about yourself and how does that kind of connect to that part of your childhood?
That is such a good question.
I
I
know, I
think,
just thought of that today. I was going to say, like, what did you learn from this? But no, what did you learn about yourself from this is so much more powerful, you know?
yeah, so I think the same lesson that I keep learning, and it keeps presenting itself in different ways, but it always seems to be the same lesson. And it's not new, it's not my lesson per se, but I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and I chose in full consciousness, I chose to come in and experience this body and this journey. And now it's, what do I do with that? And so as a kid, I always wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician because I wanted to help people the way that I had been helped.
Hmm.
And then in high school, I was having some knee issues related to my bones, and I tried acupuncture for the first time. And I thought, wow, that is cool. And it was this kind of this spark of, wow, there's a whole other kind of medicine. Because, growing up, really the only medicine I experienced was pharmaceutical and surgical, because that's really all that could be done for me.
Yeah. And being in a hospital.
Yep. And that's the kind of doctor I wanted to be. Well, now I got to high school and I discovered theater and this vivid imagination that I'd had growing up, pretending to be all these different things,
You're
a
superheroes.
superhero, a secret agent, all the whatever it was, because I couldn't physically do these things. And I was like, oh, wait a sec. You mean I can actually I can do this? I can pretend to be things and so my passion for theater and acting and storytelling was born, and that kind of led me down the path of, studying film and theater and working in the film business, but it didn't fulfill my soul. And then I had these reminders that, remember you always said you wanted to be a doctor. What happened to that? And when I had a taste of the film business and I realized that wasn't quite the place for me, it's like, yeah, I need to get back to that original calling of being a doctor. But you know what? It's not an MD. It's a little bit more of a natural holistic approach, and that's what led me to study Chinese medicine, and that's where Eric and I, became friends. And all through that time, sort of to get back to your question, I was reading, Buddhist teachings and yogic teachings and just the mystical traditions of the world, Kabbalah and mystical Judaism and mystical Christianity and all of these philosophies. And the message that I kept finding behind all of them is that spiritual being, human experience, you have the body, you are not the body. And so I tried to take that with me into whatever I was doing, whether it was, film and theater, eventually Chinese medicine, that I just tried to take that and realize what a gift this life was, the human experience, such a gift. And the things that I got to experience as a kid, I realized I started asking questions very early on that some people don't ask until their end stages of life. And I think that gave me a perspective of, there were so many things I was told I would never do. And look, I'm checking those boxes and I'm doing those things. So what else can I do? I, I'm going to make a movie. I made a movie. Oh, okay. You know what? I want to be a doctor. I became a doctor. Hey, you know what? I want to write a book. So, well, I think it gave me this idea that nothing was impossible. It doesn't mean that things weren't difficult, but I had this understanding that if I can set my mind to do it and I stick with it, I can do it. And I learned that through the suffering, and in that way, it was a beautiful gift.
Wow. That I just have to take all of that in because it was so beautiful and well said. Like, I mean, here's this young kid from the moment pretty much you were born to 10 years old being told that you can't do certain things and that certain things were not possible for you, and basic stuff as well, to like this boy just healing and becoming that superhero, becoming the superhero that you read about in the magazines. And it's interesting that you say the superhero and you talk about that, because that's literally how I see you. Like when I was like going through your bio today, I was like, yeah, superhero. Like we do this, and then like tea pouring master. Like I literally saw you as like a little superhero kung fu master. That's how I see you. So
Thank you.
just to hear that is so touching, and what an incredible hero's journey. Wow, I'm just so blown away and I'm so touched and moved by this story. And I do want to touch on before, so I don't forget, because you did mention that you were like, I'm going to write a book, and you did. Tell us about that book. I'm curious.
Absolutely. So yeah, I wrote a children's book called The Hero Inside. So
Oh
perfect
my
with what
gosh,
you're
I
talking
didn't
about.
even know that. This is so profound. Okay.
And it came about again, it's funny. I think when the healthier I got through my teenage and college years, the more I forgot of I think as I became a normal kid, and so of
Yeah.
course I wanted to enjoy that, right? And I went to college, and I drank and I partied and I did
Yeah.
all the normal college things, so to speak, and kind of in a little bit forgot about that spiritual nature. It was always with me. It
Right.
never went away, but
You're a
I just
human.
kind of I had
Different
that
phases, life.
yeah. Um, and so sure enough, one night in LA, I started having extreme abdomen pain, and I knew exactly what it was. I hadn't felt it in many, many years, but I knew it was my spleen. And so I went to the emergency room, and sure enough, they did their test, and they said, well, your spleen is full of like scar tissue, and we don't know if that's new or old, but I was like, okay, okay, good. Everything else is fine. Like there's nothing emergency going on. Okay, good. Yeah, it's my spleen reminding me. And I got home from the hospital that night, and I had to write. I just had to sit down and write. So I sat down at my computer, and what came out was this children's book called The Hero Inside. And the main phrase of this book is essentially never doubt the things you can do. There's a superhero in you.
Oh
And,
my gosh.
that is the message of this book. It's about a sick little kid who discovers his inner strength, his hero inside, and goes on to, do amazing things and help other people. And that was a powerful reminder from the universe that literally, put me back in the hospital for a night and checked me in and just, Adam, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's where the hero inside came from. So yeah, I published that. That was, gosh, around 2009.
Okay. So that was a while after, like, when you were, like you said, in your college years and everything. Wow, how amazing that that did come through all those years later to remind you of your strength and of the hero inside. And I didn't know that that was the title of your book. I apologize. But no, I don't apologize, because it's all aligned. It's all like it's so profound, that that when I asked you yesterday, I'm like, "Do you know about the hero's journey?" You're like, "Oh yeah, I do." Um, so that's funny. That's a funny on me. Um, Okay, so yes, we're gonna share the link and everything to that book, because I just think that is such an incredible story. You have so much to share, and this story is going to just touch the hearts of so many and help so many people too. I have a few more last questions here for you.
Of course, as many as you have.
My next question is, what did you learn that you would want to share with others? I know that we've definitely, you've spilled so much amazing, you've given us so much gifts already, but Is there anything that you would really want to share with others, or maybe even other parents, or, as a parent now going through, anything like this?
Absolutely. So I'll take that in two parts. I think one, to just people in general, um, never doubt the things you can do. There's a superhero in you. I think that really sums it up. But more than that, I think that we are capable of incredible things, and you don't have to have gone through, great challenges to appreciate life. But I think the more you can realize what a gift life is, I think the more motivated you might be to go out and really live it. So I would say just, go out and live it. And if there's things you want to do, give it a try. And the worst that happens is you fail, but you'll learn a whole lot in the process. And failure is a wonderful teacher. And you just, learn from it and go to the next thing. And I think something I learned along the way, and I think is particularly present in my life today, it's not what you do, but how you do it. So for a long time, when after I had the sort of awakening and I became, the doctor of Chinese medicine and was serving in a healing capacity and teaching and these sorts of things, I felt that my external life, what I was doing in my day to day, had to match up with my internal life. So this internal spiritual understanding of life I had to show that as well by being a yoga teacher and meditation teacher and a doctor of Chinese medicine, and so it sort of I had to show that. And what I came to realize is that it's not about what you do, it's how you do it. Right, today I work in real estate. I don't think people picture like, oh, what a spiritual thing to do, real estate, like, right? But it's not what I do, it's how I do it. People call me the Zen realtor because I approach this work with that sense of calm and with that sense of focus. And so my favorite story of the Zen tradition, I'll make it quick, but there's a student who hears there's this great wise master and enlightened being in the mountains, and he goes to seek him out, and he found this old man sitting in front of a hut, boiling some tea over a fire. Oh, are you the great enlightened master of the forest? And this guy says, I guess so. And the student says, please, enlightened one, tell me, what was your life like before you were enlightened? And he thinks for a moment and he says, I chopped wood and I carried water. And the student kind of absorbs that for a minute. Okay. And what was your life like after you were enlightened? And this great master looks at him and says, I chop wood and I carry water. And I love that story because again, I think it's just so to the point of it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So I think that is my message to the general listeners, that no matter what you're doing, you can approach it with a passion and gratitude for life, and that will change what you're doing into a sacred and divine act, no matter what it is. And
Hmm.
to parents, I would say, gosh, what a beautiful gift parenthood is. What a profoundly challenging and beautiful opportunity to learn and grow. Like you talk about finding an enlightened teacher in the forest, but my kids are my greatest teachers. I've read a lot of, books written by masters. I've had the privilege of sitting with some very wise beings, but no one has pushed me to grow more than my kids, just in the nature of their existence. And so I would say for parents, do the best you can to learn and grow for and from your kids. And if your kid is struggling from the kid who's been there, it will be okay. There is a part of that child that chose this experience and chose you to be their parents so that you could all grow through it. And I know it's easy to say that. And if you're going through challenges with your children, especially if they're unwell, it's very difficult to live that. But if you can find even just a minuscule bit of comfort in the knowledge that there is a greater wisdom whether you call that God or the universe or the divine or whatever you name, or name, even if you don't have a name for it, there is something that knows better than we do. And that has been my great lesson in all that I went through as a child and all that I've learned watching my children grow and face their challenges. And to me, that's the beauty of it, is there is always a reason, and we may never know it. But if you can trust the process or trust the universe, as I like to say, it helps lighten the load. And I think if you can walk through life a little bit lighter, what a beautiful place this world can be.
Wow, that was so beautifully said. My gosh, so many incredible gems in there. I can't wait to actually listen to that again and hear and really take in all those words again because that was just so profound. The very last question that I wrote down here for you today was if you could tell your inner child one thing now, if you could go back to that boy who went through all of that stuff, what would you say to that sweet angel boy now?
That is such a great question, and one I have certainly pondered before. Goodness.
I'll try not to cry.
Man, that is goodness. I mean, part of me thinks there's so much that I could say or that I would say if I had that opportunity to sit with that little guy. But then there's this other part of me that I think would just simply say, keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna be okay. Because I think, I don't have a conscious memory of it, but there had to have been a part of me that somehow knew, because I feel like I would have given up if I didn't.
Yeah,
That there,
so powerful.
yeah, I think it's so hard because I wouldn't change it. As
Yeah.
as challenging as it was, it made me who I am, and it's given me the love and appreciation of life. And I don't think I would want to say anything to change that. And
Yeah.
so it may just be a simple,
Mm-hmm.
you know, tell me about yourself. What's your favorite comic book right now? Why do you like just hang
Yeah.
out, and I think I could learn from him because the truth is, and I was having a conversation with my girls yesterday where they were asking me about stories from when I was a kid. Dad, tell us some stories from when you were a kid. And I was thinking, and I was like, gosh, so many of my memories as a kid are, essentially what we've talked about today, these big challenging moments, the time in the hospital, the painful experiences, the being sick. And so it's interesting because I don't remember a lot of the other part of my childhood, which I know was there, which was filled with so much wonder and love. But it's those big emotional, painful experiences that speak loudest in memory. And so I think that I'd be more curious to hear what he'd have to tell me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. And I love that you said like you wouldn't want to change anything. You wouldn't want to throw anything in the works that would like change any of that course. And what a beautiful gift. Like that's, having gone through so much as a child and to come out of it to this day and to be able to say that I wouldn't change a thing and that everything was just perfect as it was because you understood the plan. You even knew deep down intuitively that it was going to be okay. And here you are today with your own two beautiful children and wife and just like incredible family life and parents. I've met your parents, they're amazing. And this is such an incredible hero's journey. And this is exactly the kinds of stories that, this is exactly why I did this podcast, or Eric and I did this podcast, was exactly for this reason to share the wisdom and the gifts that we come out of, like as the phoenix when we rise, and we take those lessons with us. And it's just so beautiful to have heard your story today, Adam. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. Is there any last other key messages or anything else you want to say or share today before we both move on into the rest of our heroes' journeys?
Just thank you. I love you guys both. You're my soul family, and
Oh,
I'm
fam,
I'm
for
just
sure.
so deeply grateful that you invited me to talk with you and share a little bit of my story today. And I'm always happy to share these stories and talk about it, because if I can help one person walk a little lighter, then it's all worth it. And on that note, with my children's book, I don't sell it, I give it away.
Love that.
So when you provide the link, if anyone, no matter your age, it's a children's book, quote unquote, but we're all kids. So whether you're one or, 101, if you would like a copy, or someone, especially, a child that may be going through something, just contact me. I will happily send copies wherever they need to go, so that that message can find whoever needs to hear it.
That is such a beautiful gift to the world. Thank you so much, Adam. And we will drop your contact and everything below so people can find you and reach you. Our dear friend, amazing. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your hero's journey with us today. Such an inspiring story. I cannot wait for everybody to hear this. And we'll catch up with you next time. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Stay tuned for more incredible stories from amazing humans. We appreciate your support so much. Please subscribe, share this podcast with your favorite people, and consider giving us a 5-star review. Thank you so much. We love you.